You're listening to Mission Eve, a podcast that explores the stories of women who are opening the frontier of space to humanity. Your host is Megan Crawford, managing partner of Space Fund, a venture capital firm investing in the space industry. She is a mother, volunteer, founder, and true believer in humanity's future in space. Mission Eve is meant to inspire the girls of today who will be the women of tomorrow, leading our first permanent off-world settlements. Space needs women. Space needs you.
Welcome back to another episode of Mission Eve, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides today. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're very happy to have you. So let's start at the beginning. I always like to start there. Talk a little bit about where you were born, where you grew up, and if that had an influence on you eventually joining the space industry.
Interesting. I was born in Sonoma County, so Northern California, about an hour north of San Francisco. I don't think that had any influence on me going into space, but my parents did take me to Kennedy Space Center. My dad's Cuban, so half my family lives in Miami, and so we did the trip to go visit them when I was about 5, and I think we worked in a trip to Disney and Kennedy Space Center, and there's pictures of me on the lunar lander at Kennedy Space Center with my space books in my arms, and I think that definitely had a big impact on me.
Excellent. And so you already had space books with you, right? So by the time you got there, you were already kind of into space?
I think it must have been something I bought in the gift shop.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
But I don't remember the trip, but I do remember in kindergarten already knowing that I wanted to go to space. So it had to happen before that.
Yeah. Excellent. Were there any kind of defining people or moments in your childhood that helped you kind of get the space bug?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a coffee table book at my aunt and uncle's house called Our Universe, which is a National Geographic book. It's a picture book. It's amazing. It's something that I can't imagine anyone publishing today. It's because it's not just a science book. It's got the gods of each planet, the Greek gods. And so you got Venus and Mars and Jupiter, Neptune, the god of the sea. Yeah. And so, and it also had these mythical creatures that could be on each planet. Like there's this ostrichy thing on Mars with big ears because the atmosphere's thin that he curls up in at night because it's cold. And, it's just way too out there and imaginative for a science book, what, would be allowed in science books these days. But I loved it. Like we just so felt, impacted by that book. And then also by Star Wars. And what was the other? And then the other big impact was by then I was hooked. I was already, I've just been space my whole life. And the big milestone during my childhood was Challenger. I was in 6th grade and the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. And I just remember telling everyone that I would fly on the shuttle the very next day. Like I was not daunted. I'm like, let's do this. This is important.
Awesome. Challenger was a big part of my life as well. I was in elementary school when it happened, but we were all there watching it together, the whole school, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it had a massive impact, I think on a lot of us. So, did you ever get a chance to go to space camp?
I did.
Oh, excellent. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah. So I went to space camp in November 1990. It was amazing. We did a 24-hour mission, which as a 16-year-old, you're not pulling all-nighters yet. So that was my first all-nighter. I had the last sleep shift at 6 a.m. and it was so cool. I got to be the medic on the space station, and I was administering M&M medicines to people, and we had a guy break his leg on EVA, and his spacesuit was filling up with blood, and we had to get him back in, and it was a magical time. I loved it, and the best part is that, years later when I met my husband, George, we were comparing notes, and he went to space camp in the summer of 1990 as well.
Wow.
We just, we almost met. It's cool.
That's awesome. That's really good. Did you always want to be an astronaut when you grew up? Or were you flip-flop between a few things?
That's a great question. So because adults knew that I was totally passionate about space, they would always say, so, do you want to be an astronaut? And, I'd be my normal indignant child self and with these adults and be like, well, eye roll and be like, no, when I grow up, you won't need to be an astronaut to go to space. Everyone's going to have their own rocket in their garage. Duh. Like, I just didn't understand these adults with their old school mindsets. So I didn't think I didn't realize, I thought things would go really fast.
A lot faster. Yeah. Well, it always takes more time and more money than we expect, right? Just about everything. But everybody having their own rocket in their garage is a future I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah. Especially if it's a green one.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about kind of what came next after elementary school, high school. Where'd you go to college? What were your kind of first experiences out of high school?
Great. I went to Stanford University straight out of high school. I'm from California. It seemed a great idea to stay in this awesome place. And it was right next to a NASA center. So I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to go to NASA Ames and go to Stanford. And this would be great. And so I went into Stanford. I came in as a physics major. I had gotten a 5 on the physics AP, and I was going to find the grand unification theory, and realized that physics probably wasn't the best fit for me. And jumped around to Earth systems, which is sort of our environmental major, and international relations, because I wanted to use space to bring the world together, and eventually ended up with an internship in Congress in Washington, D.C. on the space subcommittee, and super exciting. Came here when I was after my sophomore year, just wide-eyed, and everybody on the Hill said, what are you majoring in? And I would say international relations. And they said, no. If you want to go into space, you have to have a science or engineering degree. And I was like, oh, okay. So I, junior year, went back to Stanford, changed majors to biology so that I could have a technical background.
And that's really interesting, because in today's space industry, that's no longer true.
That's true. That's true.
And it was very much, back when we were young, I remember being told the same thing, that if you're not going to be an engineer or rocket scientist, there's nowhere for you in this industry, right? Mm-hmm. But thankfully that's changed considerably.
Right. Yeah, the industry's grown a lot, and there's so many people who have these non-traditional roles, which is so fabulous.
Absolutely. So then what did you do after college?
Well, I had that existential crisis moment where you're like sitting on the couch in the dorm being like, what the heck am I going to do after graduation? Luckily, there was a wizened grad student sitting next to me, and he calmly said, Loretta, what is it you most want to do in the whole world? And well, that's an interesting question. So I thought about it, and I said, I most want to work in the astronaut office in Houston. I want to work with them firsthand and see if everything I believe about space, that this is a really important, impactful experience, is true. And he said, great, call him in the morning. So I did. I called up NASA Johnson Space Center, and the woman in the astronaut office said, I'm so sorry, we're not hiring freeze, which in the 90s, that was the thing. And I said, yeah, great, no problem. I understand. But I'm interested in doing an unpaid internship. And she sort of was like, didn't know what to say to that. But luckily she passed me off to Mike Kincaid in the co-op office, and he heard my story, realized I wasn't totally crazy, and decided to take a chance on me and invited me to come down and do an unpaid internship in the astronaut office and sort of join up with the co-ops that he managed. There's 30 undergrads coming to NASA for that semester to work. And so it was an amazing introduction to the industry. I got to work in the astronaut office, and then at lunch every day, hang out with young people as passionate about space as I was, who worked all across the agency. And we just, we had community and we had impact.
And that's wonderful. Are you still in touch with some of them?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm going down to Houston in November, for SpaceCom, and I'm looking forward to catching up with some of my old colleagues.
Excellent. So that was your first kind of internship. Then when was your first paid job?
Yeah. That's what my mom wanted to know.
Yeah.
So luckily, that was 3 months, and everyone was giving me rides and feeding me and and making it work in our community. And then, because I was already at the center, and I was meeting people, and I was able to get a job in independent assessment, which is sort of one of the safety orgs at NASA, working for SAIC. And because I already knew the buildings, I already knew all the acronyms, I already knew all the people, I already knew the programs. I was a really great new hire, like a fresh out of college, because I sort of had a leg up on a lot of the other recent graduates, because I knew my way around JSC.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you do in that role?
That was an incredible experience. We were doing safety reviews for the International Space Station. And so we'd get a certain project, like, work on this KU band antenna and go talk to the people on the NASA side, go talk to people on the contractor side, find out where their pain points are, what the problems are, what potential bugaboos there could be, and raise those issues for, from a safety perspective. And so, for me as a people person, it was sort of a good fit, because I'd get to just go sit down and be like, what are you worried about? What are your concerns? And it was also interesting because you start to realize that you talk to one group and they say, oh, I think the problem's over there. And then you talk to this other group and they say, no, the problem's definitely over there. And then the third group says, no, the problem's over there. And so everyone's sort of pointing a circle, and you realize everyone has this view of what's wrong or what would fix it, but none of them are right, or they can't all be right.
Right.
And so that gave me a lot of compassion or for perspective. Like, well, maybe we should all come to the table and try to work out and bridge the gap between your view of it's their fault and my view of it's her fault, and try to find a path forward together.
Excellent. And how long were you there?
I was there about 1.5 years. And then I realized that the California girl in Texas was a little too much, and I needed to get home, and worked a way to come back to NASA Ames and work at the NASA Astrobiology Academy.
Oh, fun. Mm-hmm. That sounds interesting. Like, what kind of...
Yeah, as an astrobiologist, I was like pig in mud. I get to go back to California. Yeah. I get to do biology. I get to work at NASA, at this field center. I get to work with Chris McKay, who I just love and adore. And so, yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. It was basically like 14 or 15 undergraduates at NASA Ames for the summer, and I was basically the camp counselor.
Oh, fun.
And I would organize tours and adventure trips and be the RA in their dorm, and it was a great job for me.
And then how did your career progress after that?
From there, I spent another year working at NASA Ames with Dr. Chris McKay on terraforming Mars, which was fabulous. He's not only a great boss, but it was an incredible subject to think about. Absolutely. Terraforming Mars. Part of that, I got to go to the Canadian Arctic, to Houghton Crater, which the Mars Society built their Flashline Research Center at a couple of years later, and got to do some field work in the Arctic, which was magical. 24 hours of sunlight is just magical. And then I came back, and after that, I decided I want to, when I grow up, I want to be like Dr. McKay. And so I went to Caltech to try to get a PhD so I could be a principal investigator like he is.
And how'd that go?
Well, yeah, that didn't go so well. It was a great school, private school, lots of love and attention. It was a great class. There were 25 of us. We were all loud, boisterous, and fun loving. In the biology department, we were like, the party of the school. My advisor, Diane Newman, was amazing and supportive and fabulous. Like, I couldn't have had like a better shot at getting a PhD. And at some point, 2.5 years in or so, I realized that, I was fighting so hard to make it work. And I just had to eventually realize that this isn't going to work for me, that I'm much better with people than I am with anaerobic bacteria. And that I want to work on helping the industry, that rather than a paper that it's hard for me to explain to my grandmother what I'm doing.
Right.
So it wasn't a good fit for my skill sets and my personality. So, and Diane was very supportive, and she said, I want you to thrive and do what you're great at, go be a space advocate. We love you. And so, it was one of the scariest things I've ever had to do. I left the path of achievement and, type A, like, I'm amazing. Look at my resume that I'm building, and the known path, go get a PhD and then a postdoc and then be a PI, to go out on my own and not know what the heck I was going to do next.
So what did you do next?
Well, luckily Caltech had a great entrepreneurship program. So excellent. I went into that. So I had a 6-month sort of cushion where they would pay my rent and, and help me think through like different business models of something I could start next. And through that, I met Karen Lau, she was an artist at Art Center. And so she became one of my great colleagues, allies, and Yuri's night. And we still work on space things together. It's great to have the creative mind helping. And then when that ended, I was lucky enough to, during my time at Caltech, I'd also gone to International Space University. Okay. They do a 9-week summer session in a different country every year. And I had done their summer session the year before in Chile, which was fabulous. And I'd met Peter Diamandis there, who's the founder of International Space University, as well as Zero Gravity Corporation and the X Prize. And I'd worked with him. And so then this was 2004. And so he hired me to work on X Prize. And this is right as we were just, we have the Ansari X Prize is now fully funded. We have the $10 million. There are these teams competing to do 2 private flights into space within 2 weeks. And I was running his special ops team. And we basically had we'd rented out the apartment next to his apartment in Santa Monica. And I was running we had 5 undergraduate volunteers just working on this all summer. And we had a great time.
Wonderful. How long were you at the X Prize?
Probably about 6 months, just ramping up to the award-winning flights and helping with VIPs, showing William Shatner around, driving Anoush Ansari to the airport.
Sounds really fun.
We had a blast.
Yeah. Oh man, that was amazing. That sounds amazing. And then after the prize was won, then what?
So by that time, I'd met my now husband, George Whitesides, in 1999 at the United Nations Unispace 3 conference in Vienna, Austria. And I remember we'd go to these receptions in Austria and they'd be playing waltz music. And he was the only American that could dance. Oh, all the European guys were out there, waltzing away. And George could hold his own. I'm like, oh, check out that guy. So anyway, but he was cute and all, but he lived in the UK. He was doing a master's degree at Cambridge. And, so it didn't go anywhere. But we'd been collaborating on Yuri's Night. It was an idea we worked on together at that conference and launched to the world. And then after he finished his master's degree, he ended up coming to work for Peter Diamandis in Pasadena and about 16 blocks from where I lived. And I thought, well, that's a good turn of events.
There you go.
And so, eventually asked him out on a date, started dating, and over this time, and so I was working for Peter, and then the company that they were working on, Blastoff, was part of the .com bubble. So they were closing up that effort, and George got a job as the executive director of the National Space Society, and so he was moved from LA to DC. And so after we won after the Ansari X Prize was awarded, I said, okay, great. You don't need me anymore. And I moved out to Washington, D.C. to be with George.
So tell us a little bit about Yuri's Night.
Oh, yeah. So that was a lot of fun. Basically, when I got to Johnson, I found out on the calendars at NASA that April 12th, it says on all the NASA calendars, it's the anniversary of the first shuttle launch. And I thought, that is so cool. I had never known that because April 12th is my birthday. Oh. And I'm like, how did I get to be 22 years old and not know that the shuttle anniversary is my birthday? I'm like, that's great. And at the same time, it was the time that the Cold War was ending and some of the Soviet artifacts were traveling to the United States for the first time. And the Soviet program was very secretive. In the 80s, we didn't really know what was going on. It's behind the Iron Curtain. Right. And I'd always been really interested in that program. And so when the artifacts came, I'm like, well, I got to go see this. And I walked into the exhibition and it said, first in space, huge picture of Yuri Gagarin. And it said, April 12th, 1961. And I was just like, get out. 20 years later to the day, the shuttle took off. Wow. It was supposed to take off on the 10th of April. And they had the consummate 2-day shuttle slip. Yeah. And so it just happened to take off on the 20th anniversary of human spaceflight. And we thought this is too good of a conjunction, of a coincidence to pass up. We have to use, and it's a holiday in Russia. It's Cosmonautics Day already, April 12th. And so we said, well, let's take this to the world. Let's show this, make this Yuri's Night holiday a day that the whole world can celebrate the power of space to bring us together.
So tell me about the organization, what you do, and kind of all the things.
Yeah, so we're really volunteer run. We said, we launched it at this UN event, and so people from around the world were like, "Oh, we want to do it in our country too." And we're like, "Okay, great, cool." And so we ended up having like 75 parties around the world the first year.
Wow.
And it's grown since then. Now I think this year we had like 159 parties in 50 different countries this year. And, for the 50th anniversary of spaceflight, we even had a party on the International Space Station. They were all in Yuri's Night t-shirts.
Oh, that's amazing.
They brought up the Yuri's Night pin floating in the window of ISS, and they recorded a video for us. It's just been really sweet. Curiosity rover has thrown a party on Mars.
That's great.
The team in Antarctica that's wintering over loves to throw a good Yuri's Night party in Antarctica, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so that's just fantastic. How many people do you think have been involved over the years? How many people do you think you've touched by that program?
That's a great question. I should really do some math on that. I tens of thousands of people for sure. This will be our April 2020 is going to be our 20th Yuri's Night, because we did the first one in 2001, and so this will be our 20th, and so it's exciting. I've just was recently at a conference and I'm running into people from all over the world, and I ran into a gentleman from Costa Rica, and he's like, "Oh, I throw the Yuri's Night parties in Costa Rica." I was like, "That's so cool."
Yeah, that's amazing. So, yeah. I absolutely love it. So is there a website people can
absolutely.
go to?
You can go to www.yurisnight.net if you want to find a party near you to go to next April, or if you want to sign up to host a party in your town. It can be, a movie watching party in your living room. You could host a happy hour at a local bar, or you could try to create something bigger with DJs and costumes and games.
Wonderful. Lots of fun. So what advice would you give to a woman who wanted to get into the industry?
If you're a student and currently studying, I would definitely recommend applying to be a Brooke Owens Fellow.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Very new on the scene, 2 years old, but making a huge impact. The Brookies are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
You get a fabulous mentor, you get a great internship for the summer at a space company, and it's not just technical, and it's not just U.S. citizens. So it's really incredible opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Have you had any challenges as a woman working in the industry?
That's an interesting question. I've been very blessed most of my career to have fabulous bosses, fabulous mentors, fabulous experiences. Most of my life, being a woman has always been an advantage, a positive. It makes it easier for me to stand out, easier for me to be remembered. And so it's been hard to hear stories from other women sharing about some of the issues they've had to deal with sexual harassment and being ignored and being passed over. I remember like at one happy hour just turning to somebody being like, in 2019, that's still happening? That happened to you? That's crazy. And so, it breaks my heart that we're still dealing with these issues. One of the things that I've also noticed is that as I get further along in my career, it feels like it's starting to become more of an issue. It's definitely, there are fewer women in board positions, in executive positions, in founder positions. And so I think it might get a little trickier to navigate from here. So that's one of the things I'm concerned about and really advocating for. Like, it's time to move the needle on these things. We really need to, we've done a great job with hiring. We're doing a great job, but retention is one of my big issues. And I talk to people in leadership and I try to really pound the message that, they say, "Oh, well, she had a baby and, so she's got this great, she chose to stay home." And that's fabulous for people who choose to stay home. But I want to push back on that belief, because I think some of the men in our industry are resting a little bit on their laurels on that. How I see it is that oftentimes a woman who's choosing to stay home, which has a baby, it can also be, maybe she stay home for a couple of years or something, but come back. But I think as an industry, it's our job to make what we're doing so compelling and so accommodating and so welcoming and so supportive that you don't feel like that you don't want to leave at the first opportunity. I mean,
Right.
the way I try to say it to people to get it is like, maybe the dads would leave at when the baby's born also if they felt like they could.
Right.
Like, because oftentimes we create these environments in our companies that are so difficult and soul and draining of our energy, our soul, our spirit, that if you have an opportunity to leave, you'll take it.
Right. So, and I love that. So making it easier and more fulfilling for women to come back to work, to help them develop their careers to that higher level. I think that's excellent. I love that. So what are your long-term goals? Where do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years?
That's a great question. Well, I definitely want to do a retirement cruise around Saturn. So I love talking to young people and being like, okay, I need you to keep in school and keep working hard because you need to build me some drives that can get me out to Saturn. Let's go.
And why Saturn? Why not one of the other planets?
Well, the view is just fantastic. Go hang out at Titan, look at the rings. I mean, it's just beautiful. I also, one of my longtime life goals has been to run an orbital retreat center. So you can imagine going to a retreat center in the forest on Earth. I'd love to run one of those as well. But ultimately to get to space and like be able to run this great facility where world leaders or business people or parents or anyone who just cares about our planet can come up and reflect and look back on our home world. Wonderful.
Wonderful. I find that just about everybody in this industry is really passionate, right? We all have that passionate drive. And that usually means that we work on projects outside of work. So tell me about kind of all the different projects you're working on or any nonprofit causes besides Yuri's Night that you're really passionate about.
Oh, that's great. So I've also written a book because my passion is helping young space leaders. I mean, that's just what I love to do. And so I wrote a book called The New Right Stuff, Using Space to Bring Out the Best in You. And it's basically, all the best things I could think to tell people or, remind you and on like how to be your best self, how to be in a meeting, how to put yourself out there, how to make requests, how to listen, how to not take things personally, how to let go of things that are upsetting you. Just all the little tricks and life hacks. I mean, I have a short attention span. So each section is about like usually less than a page long. So it's great. Like just pick it up, open to a page. Okay, great. I got that one. And so I highly recommend people go and check that out. I'm working on the audiobook right now. So, cause I'm a big Audible. I read all my books on Audible.
Me
so
too.
I figure if my book's not on Audible, it's not really a book. So that's the next step. But right now it's the book, at least is available on Amazon.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working or not doing space? Do you have some fun activities that you enjoy? Fabulous.
Yes. So I still go back every summer to the camp that I went to when I was a little girl, and I volunteer there. I've been the ropes course director. I've been the graduate counselor, and so for the last 2 summers, I've taken a group of our oldest campers, oldest high schooler campers, for a week backpacking along the Lost Coast of California, which is the part of the California coastline that was so rugged that the U.S. Corps of Engineers could not build Highway 1 down it. So Highway 1 goes inland around this portion, and it's a national forest. So it's all pristine coastline wilderness, and we backpack for a week there. Wow. And it's a magical, mystical experience, and get to help them learn the constellations, learn to be a team, learn to come into their own voice. And it's just an incredible experience.
Fantastic. So the last question that we always end with, and you think you've already answered this, but I still have to ask, when it's time to go, will you be one of the first to settle space?
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to.
All right, we'll sign you up.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for telling your story. We really enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
Mission Eve is a production of the Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating entrepreneurs and investors about their respective challenges and opportunities as it relates to space. Megan Crawford has been your host and executive producer. Aaron Pagel is the executive director for the center and producer and editor for this episode. Marketing and communications for Mission Eve is managed by Nikki Martinez. Theme music has been composed by Liz Fole. If you'd like to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/missioneve to become a monthly subscriber. We have multiple tiers available with benefits like personalized thank yous, access to limited edition t-shirts, opportunities to engage with our interviewees via online Ask Me Anything sessions, and small group gatherings with Megan Crawford when available. Any support you can offer will go a long way to helping us continue to tell the stories of the women who are making life in space a reality. Please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Center for Space Commerce and Finance, Twitter at CSCF_nonprofit, and LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/CSCF. Thank you very much for listening.